Welcome to this lesson titled House on the Rock. It is part of the series, The Sermon on the Mount. My name is Alistair. I will be your narrator for this lesson. You may wonder, how can we protect our spiritual attitudes? What does Jesus teach us? In this lesson, we will review the background of the Beatitudes. We will examine Christ's teachings about the narrow gate, false prophets, and building one spiritual house on the rock. Then we'll explore the meaning of these teachings in our life. Let's start with the first topic, background. In this icon, we see Jesus preaching the Sermon on the Mount. We can read an account of this event in the Bible, in the book of Matthew, chapters 5 to 7. In the Sermon on the Mount, Jesus covered several topics. He taught the Beatitudes, which are the 9 spiritual attitudes needed to reach the kingdom of God. Jesus taught us how the Beatitudes developed over time, how we can maintain them and protect them. We can protect them by following Christ's teachings regarding the narrow gate, false prophets, and the house on the rock. These are the topics of this lesson. Let's examine the teachings about the narrow gate. In the Bible we read, "Enter by the narrow gate, for wide is the gate, and broad is the way that leads to destruction, and there are many who go in by it. Because narrow is the gate, and difficult is the way which leads to life, and there are few who find it." This teaching brings to mind the first beatitude, "Blessed are the poor in spirit," or the humble. We are made humble by the words in the Bible, "Narrow is the gate, and difficult is the way which leads to life, and there are few who find it." So, reaching God's kingdom is a selective process, and a difficult one. Not just anyone can get in. In our life, we see that getting into a good university and succeeding there is much more difficult than, say, getting into an amusement park. Worthwhile endeavors are often more difficult to accomplish than superficial pleasures. Following God's path is difficult, but very worthwhile. Let's discover the teachings about false prophets. In the Bible, we read, "Beware of false prophets, who come to you in sheep's clothing, but inwardly they are ravenous wolves." This teaching reminds us of the 6th beatitude. In other words, beware of false prophets is a warning against those who are not pure in heart. Here we have a sheep or a lamb. This is generally thought of as a docile and gentle animal. On the other hand, the wolf is their natural predator. The wolf is portrayed here wearing sheepskin and hiding among a flock of sheep. The idea of a wolf in sheep's clothing is presented in the Bible to illustrate the notion of deceit. On the outside, a person can portray themselves as being good and trustworthy, but on the inside they can have opposite intentions and try to harm us. Hence, they are like a wolf in sheep's clothing. They appear like sheep on the outside, but are in fact more like wolves. The children's fairy tale, The Little Red Riding Hood, reminds us of this. In this tale, the wolf disguises itself as the girl's grandmother to trick her. On the outside, it is dressed to look like the grandmother, but on the inside, it is really the wolf. This illustrates the notion of deceit that is still very relevant in our times. In the Bible, we read, "You will know them by their fruits." In other words, we will recognize that they are false by their actions. In this case, the wolf attacks the sheep. In our life, the false prophets can take on different forms. On the internet, people can lie about their identity to lure innocent children or teens into their trap. The results can be devastating for the victim and their family. This is why we are warned to beware of false prophets. Now let's discover Christ's teaching about the house on the rock. Here, we equate Christ's teachings with the Beatitudes overall. In the Bible, we read, "Therefore, whoever hears these teachings of mine and does them, I will liken him to a wise man who built his house on the rock, and the rain descended, the floods came, and the winds blew and beat on that house, and it did not fall, for it was founded on the rock." In other words, Christ's teachings are the rock-solid foundation of our spiritual house. In the Bible, we also read, "But everyone who hears these sayings of mine and does not do them will be like a foolish man who built his house on the sand, and the rain descended, the floods came, and the winds blew and beat on that house, and it fell, and great was its fall." So, it's not enough to learn about Christ's teachings. We need to apply them in our life. Let's explore the meaning of these teachings in our life. This is how Jesus teaches us to protect the spiritual attitudes by being careful about the narrow gate and false prophets and ensuring that we build the foundation of our spiritual house on the rock-solid teachings of Christ. The Lord's Prayer reminds us of Christ's teachings. Let's listen to the Lord's Prayer put to music by the famous composer Tchaikovsky. thank you for participating in this lesson.